This is CBC Here and Now.
It's disappointing news that we heard here today in Labrador West.
Right now we're in a very dark tunnel and the light seems quite some distance away.
It's been hard to get flights out of here, and now it's going to be even harder.
Air Canada cuts routes as part of major restructuring from the pandemic.
The officer of Councillor Powell is hereby declared vacant.
The people of the city of Mount Pearl deserve to hear me speak in a public forum, and I believe that I have earned that respect.
Chaos in Mount Pearl as council votes to remove 2 of its councillors. It's all tied to an investigation into Steve Kent.
Another day or 2 of some heat and humidity sticks around, but we're looking at a cool down as we head towards the weekend.
Welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes. Air Canada is cutting 7 routes in this province and closing its station in Wabush. It's part of changes being made across Canada to cut costs in the pandemic. The cuts affect most of the airports in this province. The flights from Deer Lake, Gander, and Wabush have all been eliminated. So has the route between Goose Bay and St. John's. The airline has discontinued a total of 30 routes across Canada, in addition to laying off 20,000 people. The news is another hit to the struggling airports in this province. The Gander Airport Authority says the 2 cuts there will cost the airport $1 million. It comes in the middle of an already disastrous year. The airport is losing more than $10,000 a day. News of an impending Atlantic bubble hasn't saved those flights for the summer. CEO Reg Wright says he's just trying to weather the storm.
I think there may be some light at the end of the tunnel, but right now we're in a very dark tunnel and the light seems quite some distance away. And most of the modeling we've done shows that recovery is going to take 4 to 5 years to get back to 2019 levels. So we're braced for a very long and protracted return. Of course, there's a lot of question marks with that. When will there be a vaccine? When are people going to feel more confidence to travel again?
Many of those flights inside the province were contracted to another Gander business. Evis Air has been operating the Air Canada flights since 2004 and will see a huge hit as a result of these cancellations. The company wasn't available to speak today, but Gander's mayor says it's bad news for a town built on aviation.
So they're very important. They employ a lot of people. Those people, many of them live here. And the owners and shareholders live here and in the area and so on, and it's certainly a blow to that company. Hopefully, a blow that they can survive and come back, stronger. But at this point, we really don't know what the duration would be.
And the Deer Lake Airport loses 2 Evis Air flights because of Air Canada's cancellations. 1 flight to Happy Valley Goose Bay and 1 to St. John's. The airport just reopened last week with some flights coming in from Halifax and Toronto. CEO of the Airport Authority says this cancellation is terrible news for the airline industry. It will take 4 to 5 years for the airport to recover from the COVID-19 travel bans. Tammy Priddle says the lack of air access affects the airport and beyond.
Anytime that there is a reduction in aircraft movement, it means decreased access for the traveling public, and that's not just in relation to tourism, that's in relation to business. So it means that businesses that may be looking to come set up here will have decreased access for travel in and out of the region. It means less opportunity for movement of cargo, less opportunity for exporting. So it does impact not just, Deer Lake Airport, it impacts the entire region.
And the airline is leaving Labrador West altogether. Air Canada is cutting its Wabush stations, stopping routes to Goose Bay and Sept-Îles, Quebec. Wabush Mayor Ron Barron says the move will make travel more difficult, but he says Air Canada had an on and off history in the area and was known to undercut competitors entering the market.
These guys are burning bridges here, and they're burning them again today. And I just hope this is not a ploy by Air Canada now, with the stance that the federal government's after taking, not so much to give them help now, that this is a ploy to get government on side, to give them our tax dollars again to bail them out. I personally am not a fan of Air Canada, have never been. They offered a second-grade service here.
Now, Barron is confident other carriers will step up and service Labrador West. We'll hear more from the mayor in about 45 minutes. Well, in other news tonight, 2 Mount Pearl city councillors were kicked off council in Mount Pearl late this afternoon over conflict of interest in the Steve Kent probe. The meeting started 4:30 this afternoon, and council immediately moved to remove the 2, Andrea Power and Andrew Ledwell. Council says both had conflicts of interest with respect to the harassment investigation involving Chief Administrative Officer Steve Kent. Both are alleged to have spoken to and or voted on the investigation over a 7-month period between last October and this April and failed to disclose the conflict. Power has denied any wrongdoing. She has also filed a harassment and bullying complaint against the mayor.
I have nothing to gain or lose by the removal of the former CAO, and in the event that I am now removed from council, I shall be appealing the matter to the Supreme Court immediately. At this time, I also want to advise that I have submitted a complaint pursuant to the Respectful Workplace policy, as well as the harassment-free workplace policy, against the mayor for comments he has made, which in my opinion constituted behavior that included bullying and inappropriate comments and behavior that has significantly reduced my value and contribution to council.
So the majority of council has voted in favor, so the motion is passed. I would request now that, given that Councillor Power's seat has been vacated, that she leave the meeting.
Well, Councillor Andrew Ledwell also maintained his innocence before being voted off council.
Simply put, I maintain my innocence. I am not in a position of conflict of interest. And through an appeal, I will be taking this kangaroo court to the Supreme Court Trial Division as soon as remotely possible.
Councillor Ledwell, your seat is declared vacant, having been found in conflict of interest. Thank you very much.
So both were kicked off the virtual meeting, which then continued without them. For full details on this story, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/NL. The Chief Medical Officer of Health says it's time to open up. Dr. Janice Fitzgerald defended the plan to allow travel within the Atlantic provinces. Here in us, Peter Cowan joins us live. So, Peter, what reassurances did she offer today?
Carolyn, we heard her say she recognizes that a lot of people are afraid, but she says she's not going to base her decisions on fear. Instead, she's going to base it on science. And what she says the science shows right now is there are just 5 active cases in all of the Atlantic region. So that means it is safe to ease some of the restrictions and allow travel to happen within this area. She said basically, with what we're seeing right now, she can't justify keeping those borders closed.
Uncertainty breeds fear. There's no doubt of that. But our choices must reflect the science and not our fears. We have trusted the science to get us to where we are today, and we must continue to do so. Special measures orders such as our travel restrictions must be based on evidence and applied with in the least restrictive way possible. When we implemented travel restrictions, it was at a time when the rates of disease prevalence were higher in many provinces. In the time since, the prevalence across the country has dropped, particularly in Atlantic Canada.
So if you look at what should we be doing within the province in order to try and reduce the risk, well, with Canada Day coming up, I asked her about the double bubble plus 6, the idea that those are the main people that you should be interacting with. And she says, recognize that people are going beyond that now, and there are ways to do that safely. She gave an example.
My son graduated this past week, and we invited people over for a distanced gathering in our backyard, and it went really well, and people practiced good physical distancing and were safe, but we had lots of great conversation, and it was still a good time. So I think there are things that people can do to interact more with others without going against some of the public health measures that we've recommended. So the goal here is to try to keep your close contacts as low as you can, outside of your core group of contacts, your bubble, and knowing that, yes, of course, you are going to have some. There are going to be situations that are going to be unavoidable at work or playing sports or whatever the case, but to try to keep that as low as you can. And when you do have those situations, keep track of it, so that you know who you came into contact with, so that you know who your close contacts are, so that when we have to do contact tracing, because it's going to happen, that we're able to do that as quickly and efficiently as possible.
The one area that she is concerned about is bars. She said over the weekend she saw examples where there were far too many people in establishments and there wasn't that physical distancing. There have been outbreaks in other areas linked to crowded bars, and she's worried that if people continue to crowd in there, there might be one here as well. Carolyn?
Thanks so much, Peter. That's Here and Now's Peter Cowan reporting live. RCMP are investigating an armed robbery that happened in Port Blandford around 9:20 Friday night. According to police, the suspect entered the corner stop gas station looking like this. She allegedly waited for customers to leave the store before taking a hammer out of her bag, going behind the counter and demanding money from the cashier. The thief took an undisclosed amount of money and got into a white four-door Chevy Cruze where police believe other people were waiting. The vehicle was last seen headed west on the TCH. Anyone with information is asked to contact Clarenville RCMP or Crime Stoppers. Police say nobody was hurt during the holdup. Well, 100 or more people in the Bay d'Espoir area protested this morning over the loss of emergency services at their health clinic. Demonstrators blocked workers from getting in or out of the hydro site in the area. They say they chose the site because so much of the island's power comes from there, and they wanted to be noticed. Central Health cut emergency services at the Bay d'Espoir clinic about a month ago, in part due to a lack of doctors. People now have to travel to Harbour Breton or Grand Falls Windsor. The Bay d'Espoir clinic covers about 3,100 people. Well, starting a new business is stressful at the best of times. Starting a new business in the middle of a pandemic, well, that's a major gamble. But one Newfoundland man says he's forging ahead with his adventure tourism business. Here and Now's Ariana Kelland took a trip to the southern shore to visit a wilder experience.
The last time we spoke to Renee Ritter, he was trekking across Greenland for charity. So it may not come as a surprise that Ritter likes taking risks.
For me personally, my personality is 100% or dead stop. So I just thought, after weighing the pros and cons, why not just go for it and keep a positive attitude, and hopefully things will work out. And then if they don't, then I can say that I tried to make it work.
This is scenic Cape Royal on the southern shore. For decades, outfitter Stan Cook offered sea kayaking, bringing thrill seekers next to whales and icebergs. When he retired, Ritter jumped at the chance to fill that void.
Having a place like Cape Royal, where everybody here in the community has been so welcoming and helpful and encouraging, and I just feel really blessed to be here.
With guides, base operations, and a manager, the Wilder experience is ready for customers.
Right now we're offering daily sea kayak tours, so we're offering a half-day tour, 2 half-day tours actually, and a sunset tour. And eventually we are also going to offer pack rafting and hiking and other custom activities.
Got all the Transport Canada stuff.
Now they just need people to come. It's no easy feat. Jobs have been lost, income even more so. But with the government's Stay Home Year campaign and a new Atlantic bubble, they're encouraged.
My focus is to offer people who are resident in Newfoundland a really enjoyable experience after being cooped up inside for the last 3.5 months. We also are absolutely welcoming of other people from other provinces as well, and we're taking, as Erica said, the required precautions to keep our guests safe, and we just hope that our guests will also do the same.
Tomorrow is official launch day, and Ritter says they have already had bookings for the next couple of weeks, a trend he's hopeful will continue. Ariana Kelland, CBC News, Cape Royal.
Well, it's not all doom and gloom in the tourism sector. The Fogo Island winery says it's kept up a lot of its sales, even during the COVID-19 pandemic. The winery kept up its production throughout the lockdown and shipped as much wine as it ever has. The winery operates a restaurant and a gift shop as well.
With the Newfoundlanders being able to travel and do the staycations, that's awesome, because if that wasn't going ahead, then yes, I could see being more on the negative side. But where we always see a lot of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, we're seeing them even a lot more now, even already, right? So we're hoping now that when July comes in, that we're going to see even more.
Well, he's known to many as the face of the force. Today, George Horan retired after 37 years with the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary. He's the last original member of the mounted unit, and for his final shift, he fulfilled his dream of riding home on his horse.
Yeah, I guess you're the face of the force when you're on this. Listen, it's a pleasure to be a member of the Constabulary, and it's a bigger pleasure when you're with the mounted unit. Today, I'm walking away from a very big family. Best job in the world. 2003, I was one of the lucky constables who got to ride the two beautiful horses. It was the hardest interview I've ever done in my life to get a job, because I wanted the job so bad. When I was a little boy, Santa Claus brought me a little foal. I had him for 38 years. I love him. After that, I just fell in love with riding. You get so attached to him. It's just like having a small youngster all over again. My fella's since gone, the original, Townsend. He was phenomenal. Again, like I said, it's part of the family, and when you lose him, it's a big strike.
What does retirement hold in store for you?
An empty heart when I see his horses, an empty heart. But listen, it's time, there's lots of young, capable men, women here in the force that are going to take over this old fella's job.
What does the mounted unit mean to your dad and the horses?
It means everything to him. I remember when he first let us know he was going to apply and he got the job. He spent some time in Ontario to do his training. And when he came back, it was nothing but a smile ever since. He got to pin my badge on when I graduated, which is hard to describe. And yesterday we had a day together in a police car. It's the first time since I've been a kid, I guess, we went to a Christmas parade. And that was, again, it's very hard to put in words how that was.
And it was very, very emotional. My daughter as well is after applying for the job, so who knows, it might be 3 for 3.
Yeah, well, we joined at the same time, myself and George. And when I think about George Horan, I think about a person with a big heart, great sense of humor, who was really what you'd like to see in an officer in this uniform. He had respect for people, people had respect for him.
When he was getting it ready, I said, what's that for George? He said that we're going to get works and services to make it.
We've been stuck at home for so long and have had nothing to do, so it's better to be at something. I'd rather be out here than at home.
No pool, no problem for the Mount Pearl Marlin Swim Club. They ditched the swimming pool and hopped in Octagon Pond. I'm going to swim with them. That story coming up on Here and Now.
We're looking at a warm Canada Day ahead. Also the risk of some thunderstorms. Temperatures are going to drop in some areas, though. I'll have all those details coming up.
This weather update is brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. This year, it's Stay Home Year, the year to rediscover home.
Ashley is here now to look at the weather forecast. And Ashley, I see you're down at Kitty Vitty Gut tonight. It looks like a fairly gray evening out there.
Yeah, it's been gray pretty much all day. We've seen some on and off showers too, which has actually been fairly nice considering it's been so warm and humid this afternoon. It's a nice little bit of relief for sure. Let's take a look at those temperatures across the board. A number of areas seeing temperatures in the 20-degree range, mid to high 20s. In fact, 29 degrees in Deer Lake and then up through Happy Valley, Goose Bay. The hot spot this afternoon, 33 degrees. You're just shy of the record set back in 1967. But overall, again, like that humidity, like I was saying, feeling closer to 30, anywhere from 30 to 36 on that humidex value, certainly up through Happy Valley, Goose Bay, feeling more like 35 this afternoon. Now, we do have an area of low pressure. That's going to spark some showers as we head through the overnight tonight. We do have some showers on the go, too, for areas in central. That will generally taper off as we head through the night. Overall, we're looking at the potential for more shower activity continuing for eastern areas of Newfoundland, even through the overnight. Southern areas, some drizzle and fog, the story like it has been for the last little bit. And we're also looking at temperatures staying quite mild, anywhere from 16 to 19 degrees from St. John's to Corner Brook, and then a little bit cooler along the coast. Going to feel a lot different for you up through Labrador, down to 7 degrees after that heat and humidity today. And unfortunately, that's going to be the last of it for you. But it is going to stick around for most of the island tomorrow. And because of that, we do have the risk of some thunderstorms, certainly through central, and they'll be in the afternoon. But into the early morning hours, there is a potential down through the Burin Peninsula and the southern Avalon that we could hear a few rumbles of thunder. But pretty much after 4, 5, 6 o'clock is when we'll probably see that thunderstorm developing through areas of central. Otherwise, it's going to be a gray day for the northern peninsula and even more rain moving in towards the west coast as we head into the morning hours. There's your temperatures from tomorrow, anywhere from 24 to 29 degrees. Again, very humid. The heat and humidity looks like it'll be bullseyed around Green Bay, White Bay tomorrow afternoon. Otherwise, temperatures a little bit cooler along the coast, anywhere from 16 to 18 degrees. And then coastal Labrador, much cooler tomorrow, 6 degrees in Nain, 10 in Cartwright, and then we're going to hang on to some of that heat for Lab City, 24 degrees. So overall, not a bad Memorial or Canada Day weekend as long as you're paying attention to the skies in central in the afternoon. So for Thursday, some showers will move through again. We're looking at that potential, pretty gray and rainy. This is when we'll see those temperatures drop, certainly into Friday afternoon as we see some of that colder air from Labrador move down. But here's where your temperatures will be sitting, 15 to 19 degrees, temperatures dropping into the afternoon. And then Lab City, you're looking at 17 degrees and plenty of sunshine. So this cooler temperatures will stick around through Friday, dropping even more, about 10 degrees. And then by Saturday and Sunday, temperatures rebound. And it looks like at this point, we should see plenty of sunshine for St. John's and eastern Newfoundland. For central, temperatures in the teens again through at least the first half of the weekend. And then by Sunday, back into your 20-degree range. But it does look a little bit gray, certainly for western Newfoundland for both Saturday and Sunday with the sun peeking out late day. Eastern Labrador, some teens eventually rebounding both Saturday and Sunday with plenty of sunshine in play, and then same thing for Western Labrador. Had to share this great shot of a foggy morning in Hickman's Harbor. Thank you so much to Yolanda for sending that photo in. If you have any photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Eerily beautiful. Thank you so much, Ashley.
So when COVID-19 hit, it forced the closure of swimming pools all around the world and all across Newfoundland and Labrador, meaning my friends here on the Mount Pearl Marlin swim team had nowhere to train. But then the weather started to warm up, and then their coaches had an idea. Give me a hand there, Natalie. They were going to take the swimmers out of the pool and put them into the pond. And rather than stand on the sidelines like Anthony Germain, I figured I would get in the water and go for a swim with him. All right, try to keep up. Let's go.
We had to sort of think outside the box and pretty quick, you know. With athletes at the level that we coach at, they don't like to be not doing something, and swimming is what they prefer to do. So we started with the Zoom workouts online and doing some boot camp stuff. And then once they opened up the restrictions a little bit, about a month ago, we started a run program, and then decided as soon as we can get into that pond is the only logical reason for us, right? The logical step.
It was pretty hard when everything got shut down because just in normalcy, like we used to swim in pools 7-8 times a week, and we went from doing absolutely nothing. And then the whole thing of getting up at 5 in the morning to go to practice and then going to school all day, we didn't have any of that anymore. So it was a bit of a shift.
Again, we'll go 2 laps nice and easy, folks.
I kind of thought at the first that they were kind of crazy because it's going to be really cold, because knowing Newfoundland weather, this is not normal. So I was like, it's going to be really cold. And then I was kind of excited because I miss all my friends.
After we do 2, we'll come on in and regroup. It's definitely a different challenge. I think it's great that you have both aspects, because now that open water is a national sport, we take it very serious with our club. And so we do train every year doing open water in the summertime. We have an open water club, sort of a natural progression to just start it a couple months earlier.
Crazy different, to be honest. With my wetsuit on, it's harder to bend the arms, I find, especially. So it's more like a straight arm swim kind of, which is different because the way I've been swimming ever since I started was just bending the elbows and everything like that. But now I'm going like windmills. So it's a bit different.
No, it's too cold. Not yet. And then you get the parents, right? And, no, listen, are you sure, Chris? I was like, I come from a triathlete background and a triathlon background, and I've been in open water events all through the world. And I know once what those wetsuits can do to you and keep the warmth. And you'd be surprised on how warm you can be when you're swimming and working out.
Not being able to see the bottom and not being able to like flip, because like you're just going back and forth, and now you're going in like circles and triangles, and it's just nauseating.
First 2 girls coming around in record time. When the COVID did happen, these guys were in really top training for Olympic trials and Eastern Canadians, and we had some medal hopefuls for our club. That was a really difficult pill to swallow for some of those young Olympic first-time trials, trials competition at the highest national level, and I really felt bad, so I really wanted to go out of the way, and our club wanted to support these top athletes and do everything we can to get them going where they want to be. And Jeremy's time is 2:46, Jeremy. 2:40.
A lot of seniors were really stressed out because they were financial abuse from their grandchildren or anyone else at home, because they were looking for money for drugs or alcohol. We also received calls from males that some were in unhealthy relationships and some were, how do I stop myself from doing this?
An incredible surge in calls for support. That's ahead on Here and Now. Welcome back to Here and Now. While everyday life for many people hit pause during the pandemic, so did crime. The RNC shared data with CBC-NL for the months of April and May when strict public health restrictions were in place. Let's take a look. In areas policed by the RNC, property crime, including burglaries, thefts, and vandalism, declined by a third. That's relative to the same time last year. Other crimes, including breach of court orders, declined even more, nearly cut in half during the same period. But crimes against persons, including assault or harassment, didn't see the same drop, only an 11% and 12% decline during the months of April and May. Constable James Cadigan offered this explanation.
These are crimes involving people often known to one another. So in these situations, those persons would have contact information. They would have access or perhaps live in the same home. And that's often why you would see that trend not shift too far from the norm. When we talk about crimes against property, break and entry, or property damage, we're talking about crimes of opportunity. And we speak a lot about, reporting of suspicious persons. And a crime of opportunity would be much less likely if persons are going to be home in their residence and willing to report any suspicious activities.
An organization that aims to address the root causes of violence and support victims says numbers have skyrocketed during the COVID crisis. Violence Prevention Avalon East says it's seen a 75% uptick in calls for support, and that's just on the Avalon. Now the group is predicting another surge as restrictions ease. Here Now, Cease Hare spoke with Val Barter.
Val, what did the numbers show in the early days of the COVID lockdown?
Yeah, so we became very busy. We received 8 to 10 calls a day. Here in St. John's, in the Avalon East office only, we received a 75% increase of calls or people reaching out to us on our Facebook page or our website page, so they can email us from there as well. And it was a lot of different calls depending on food insecurities, or they're not safe at home, where do they go? A lot of people at first, I believe, thought that the shelters and women's centers weren't available. So we started to rally and make sure that they did know that they were available. A lot of my calls, not all, but a lot of them were from people in the community saying, "I know this neighbour might be needing support. They were in a violent, abusive relationship that we know of. What do I do for them?" Guidance counsellors reaching out to us, knowing that children are home and safe right now because school was a safe place for a lot of them, and looking for referrals and stuff like that. So to me, it was more people reaching out for other people. Women would call and say their abuse is getting worse. Children were seeing it because normally they'd be going to school or to a sporting event and they wouldn't hear them yelling as much or pushing around and stuff like that. So children got more exposure to it than ever before. Now we know what happens regardless of COVID.
What are the circumstances of the other calls?
So I'd have seniors calling, of course. A lot of seniors were really stressed out because they were financial abuse from their grandchildren or anyone else at home because they were looking for money for drugs or alcohol. We also received calls from males that some were in unhealthy relationships and some were, how do I stop myself from doing this?
Val, did you expect to see the 75% increase in activity?
Yeah, no, actually it was a big shock to us at first. I thought we would expect some increase, but not by 75%. That was a huge shocker to us, and some of my board members actually alleviated some of the calls for me, which was great. But we know it's probably going to get even higher now once the level 2 happens, because people are going to be looking for shelters more. They can get out. How do I get to ours Kirby House or another transition house in the province? So we see our calls increasing again now soon.
So you think that things will get busier for you guys before things settle down?
Absolutely busier. I wouldn't say worse, because we want them to find that support. So it's very important that they reach out to shelters or us for support.
Your organization also launched an online campaign with information. What do the numbers show in terms of activity on the website?
Yeah, so the website activity has been huge from people all across Newfoundland and Labrador, and some in Canada and some in the States actually. So if they have internet access, they can go on our website, Violence Prevention Avalon East.ca, and there's a slew of information, whatever they're looking for, whether it's any resources in the community that are open, such as the women's centres, transition houses, intimate partner violence team at the RNC. Whatever support they need is all listed there, and there's also like articles and information about different types of violence, so people are aware too what to look out for.
And what about the, wasn't there a campaign launched in April?
Yes, we done an Unsafe at Home campaign, and so that lists different types of violence, like I said, where to find support, I need help, that sort of stuff, and if you are an abuser, what can you do about it? Everything that you can think of.
Are you able to track the clicks on that page
Yes.
and the activity?
Yes, and actually I don't because I'm not tech savvy, but one of my board members, she's amazing, and she do, and she sent it out to us the first month, and it was astonishing.
Busy?
Very, very busy.
Val Barter, thanks for your time.
Thanks very much for having me.
And we created a personalized grocery list that was specific for them. And again, that goes back to making sure that we're maintaining the dignities of these families.
The pandemic dashed plans for Pride Month, so a group on Fogo Island switched gears to feed families in need. That story's coming up. Well, June is Pride Month, but with the pandemic, this year's celebrations have been very different. One group on Fogo Island decided to pivot their energy from planning Pride events into a different way of helping others. The co-founders of Fogo Island Pride, Evan Parsons and Trevor Taylor, join me now. Hi.
Hello.
Hi there.
Why don't we start with you telling us about the program that you started?
Well, it is the food security program that was kickstarted from actually us getting a grant from Food First NL. We really were looking to provide support to the community because we knew that there was no food security program or food bank on the island. We knew that there was a need for it. And of course, with COVID-19 and everything that it was, we knew that our events weren't going to be the same this year. So we decided to pivot our efforts into that instead.
Can you talk a little bit about what you learned about the need for food there? How big is the need? What kind of a demand is there?
We put out the call for, people can nominate families or themselves if they're in need, and we put it out through social media and through places like that on the community channel and whatnot. And what we didn't realize is that there was sort of a delay too, as people that were seniors or people that are on low income houses that don't have the internet or TV, it got around by word of mouth. So that took about 2 weeks. So we ended up, I think, with close to 30 families on our application process.
Is there a challenge though around identifying people in need? You're in a small town. You just mentioned the technical barriers there, but everyone knows everyone. People might be hesitant to raise their hand and say, "Hey, I need help." Did you encounter much of that?
Somewhat. I think our program actually operated on a nomination system, so it was other community members reaching out either to us to say, "Hey, I noticed that this family is here. I think they very well could benefit from this program." And then when we contacted them, it wasn't. It was all anonymous. It was kept within our committee. I know a big piece of what Food First NL is trying to do is overcoming the stigma other than reaching out and asking for help. And just like you said, in a small town, everybody does know everybody.
And what kind of a difference do you think it did make to those families? How much food did you supply them, and what kind of a difference do you think it made for them?
Initially, it was anywhere between $75 to $125 per month for up to 4 months for essential grocery items.
We actually did contact these families and get their preferences. And we created a personalized grocery list that was specific for them. Because oftentimes if you are getting food from a food bank, you're getting what people didn't want. You're getting the canned goods. You're getting these frozen goods that are not necessarily nutritious. So for us, when we made these phone calls, it was like, no, well, what will work for your family? What is it that we can get for you? Here is up to $125 that now you have available to you to get the things that you probably otherwise wouldn't buy. And really, the response has been amazing. I mean, families are so appreciative. They're so grateful.
This whole program started up because of Pride Month. Now Pride Month is almost over. So what's next? Are you going to continue with this program? What are your plans for it?
Well, I think we are. We don't know what that looks like just yet. But now I will say, Carolyn, Pride Month for us is actually, even though we celebrate Pride Month now during June, our actual Pride Week is actually going to be in August here on Fogo Island. So we are still in the midst of planning our celebrations.
Well, good luck with your Pride events coming up in August, and good luck with the program going forward. Thank you so much, Evan Parsons and Trevor Taylor, for sharing your story with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
No problem.
It is about respecting and protecting each other. It may be uncomfortable. It may look unusual. It may take you out of your comfort zone. I can say that's true for me because I've been wearing a mask regularly in recent times. But our doctor says that it works.
In national news, Toronto's mayor and city health officials want masks and face coverings to be mandatory for indoor public spaces. If approved by City Council, the temporary bylaw will come into effect next week. Meanwhile, Quebec is going to make masks mandatory on public transit starting July 13th. The Premier hasn't ruled out extending the requirement to other areas in the future. Well, Canada plans to extend its order banning most foreign travelers from entering the country until at least the end of July. It was put in place back in March, but was set to expire tonight. The law bars entry to all travelers who are not Canadian citizens or permanent residents. A separate order allowing essential travel between Canada and the U.S. will remain in place until July 21st. This one lets essential workers, such as truckers and health workers, cross the southern border. Canada has reported 104,000 cases and 8,600 deaths. The U.S. has had more than 2.6 million infections and more than 126,000 deaths. Well, as we reported earlier, Air Canada is leaving Labrador West. The airline is canceling 30 routes and pulling out of 8 airports across the country. Here Now's Katie Breen asked the mayor of Wabush for his take.
Air Canada is cutting 7 routes across the province. 2 of those are in Wabush. And Mayor, what's that going to mean for your community?
Well, it's disappointing news that we heard here today in Labrador West, because it just doesn't affect Wabush. It's Labrador City and even our neighbouring community in Fremont. They're going to be affected by this too. It limits your options now flying out of here. In the past, not in this COVID situation, it's been hard to get flights out of here. And now it's going to be even harder when business starts coming back to some kind of normalcy, I guess.
Mining, of course, is #1 in Lab West. How do you think that this is going to affect that industry?
Well, everything is going to be affected. Companies are dealing with some of these, bringing their workers in and out of the area. I've reached out to another local carrier that's here, PAL, to see what they're going to be doing. And, I've been assured basically that, they will step up to fill any voids that Air Canada is going to drop here in the area, not just here, other places in Atlantic Canada. And what I've been told so far, I'm somewhat assured of what they're doing, and we're going to be reaching out to other airlines too to try to bring them in here, like we've done in the past.
What's the history with Air Canada and the other airlines in the region?
Well, Air Canada has had an on and off history here for decades, I guess. It's nice that we have an option, but we've seen here in the past where Air Canada drove out competitors with pricing and stuff like that. They hurt travel companies here in the past and the residents being able to have an option. And if this is going to happen again, that they're going to pull out of here now and come back in if somebody decides to come in here and offer that service, so they can price them out of the market again, I'm not for that. These guys are burning the bridges here, and they're burning them again today. And I just hope this is not a ploy by Air Canada now, the stance that the federal government's after taking, not so much to give them help now, that this is a ploy to get government on side to give them our tax dollars again to bail them out. I'd be against them ever coming back here if that's the case, unless we could get another provider here. I just hope PAL is going to step up like I think they've said they will do.
What does this closure say about the future of Wabush and the region?
Listen, the mining is what the future of this region is. As long as that stays strong, economics here are going to be good. We've seen the history of what happened here over the years with downturns in industry, job losses, and our communities do suffer. But we're kind of back into high mode. Iron ore is reaching good levels again. Companies are making a good dollar off the iron ore here. It's not the airlines that drive the economy here. It's the industry, and those airlines support the industry.
Being a big guy or having facial hair, it's just hair, like it just grows. There's no reflection of the person you are based on your facial hair.
Someone said it's the beard that's on the inside that counts.
It's about just showing people as people, put on a tail, like now you're a merbai.
It's not just about men in tails, it's about pretty much anybody in tails, and that's kind of the beauty of merbais.
I want people in different ways to see men being depicted in ways that they're not used to seeing them.
There will be some people who are maybe challenged by what they're seeing. But first and foremost, we're all gorgeous.
Welcome back. Well, without urgent and sustained action, koalas will become extinct in the Australian state of New South Wales within 30 years. That's the finding of a year-long parliamentary inquiry.
This is desperate times. We've got 90% of populations are in decline, and the impact on the fires has meant they're just becoming unviable.
Drought and the destruction of habitats play a part even before the bushfires in New South Wales. Those fires were particularly lethal. More than 80% of the population has vanished entirely from some parts of the state. The report recommends dozens of calls to action by Australia's government. Well, music concerts are a summer staple, but not this year, and that means many musicians are losing income. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson shows us some of the creative ways they're getting back to work.
He usually performs inside arenas, but now Brett Kissel is bringing the party to the parking lot.
This is the way we can bring music back, but keep everybody safe while still bringing everybody together, while still keeping everybody apart. This can work.
As Kissel's band members play behind plexiglass shields, fans have to stay inside or stick close to their vehicles.
I feel pretty safe. The spacing's good. The setup's amazing.
We were kind of tired of sitting around the house and wanted to get out.
Ottawa's Blues Fest is also shifting gears into a drive-in concert series. It's one way musicians are trying to get back to work after losing billions due to COVID-19 cancellations.
So it is absolutely disastrous. People know that it's going to come back someday, but it's going to be a very gradual return. It's going to be a much smaller business.
Another strategy some music venues and bands are considering, so-called hybrid shows. Toronto's newly renovated El Macombo, equipped with high-end control rooms for streaming, is about to start hosting musicians on its famous stage. For now, without audiences, but down the line, that could change.
We're very hopeful that as the grip starts to loosen with social gatherings, that we'll be able to do a combination of having an audience here, a small audience, and stream the show at the same time.
For his part, Brett Kissel admits that drive-ins don't give him that direct connection to his fans.
I will do my part to give more energy than I've ever given before because I can't reach you. I can't touch you.
But until it's safer to get closer, this may be the next best thing.
I want to hear everybody honk your horns for me right now. Come on.
Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
A different kind of summer concert for sure. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great night.